How you get, everybody? Welcome to the Bricks and Bleachers podcast. All things Chicago Cubs in under 10 minutes. Cubs have a winning record after the All-Star break, but is it too little too late? Cody Bellinger continues his amazing pace, and there is a new Cubs Hall of Famer, and so much more to talk about. Chicago Cubs have won 4 of their last 5, including 2 of 3 this weekend with the St. Louis Cardinals. A 4-3 win on Friday, followed by an 8-6 victory yesterday. Cubs were trailing the Cardinals multiple times in Saturday's game, down 1-0, down 3-1, down 5-3, and again 6-5. Started the game briefly delayed by rain, then an almost 90-minute rain delay right after the 7th inning stretch. But the Cubs pull it out. Michael Fulmer with the start. That's right, a reliever making an appearance in the first inning. One of those opener situations some teams have been experimenting with the last couple of years. You have a reliever pitching at the first inning, then you bring in a more traditional starter to take it from there. To me, it's a dumb ploy, too deeply rooted in analytics. Those in favor of using an opener say it helps create more favorable matchups for your pitching staff. But look, that's highly subjective. And in the Cubs case yesterday, Cardinals hitters still broke through. They proved the analytics wrong. They still got plenty of hits. Lars Nootbaar led off the game with a home run. He, Goldschmidt, and Gorman, 1, 2, 3 in the order. They went 6 for 12 on the day. So the belief that a reliever will create a better matchup in the first inning, or for the starter that follows, will be more in the groove when the top of the order comes back around. Yeah, that simply is false. Hopefully the use of an opener is not something we continue to see from the Cubs. If it does, I think it reflects poorly on the decision-making that comes from the Hoyer-Russ team. I've never been one to scrutinize daily lineups, but there have been some real head-scratchers this year, really the last couple of years. If you win, I'm sure details like that get overlooked. When you have a sustained losing record year after year, it's clear many aspects of the current approach are not working. Let's talk about good news for the Cubs. Daniel Palencia got the win yesterday. He's 2-0 after 6 appearances. This is a guy who was just called up from Iowa a few weeks ago. He throws 100 miles an hour. He's fun to watch. Adbert Alzolay with the save. Only his 9th save of the year. Cubs have won a lot of blowouts, non-save situations, but he's looked pretty impressive in his appearances, and I hope he gets more time closing out games. That seems to be the consensus, seems to be the feeling moving forward. Cody Bellinger went 2 for 5 yesterday, 4 RBI. He has been scorching hot over the last 3 weeks, even beyond that. His average just below 400 over his last 30 games, over 450 looking at his last couple of weeks. He's got contact. He brings power. He's great on the base paths as well. It's all there. He signed a 1-year deal the offseason in hopes of reclaiming his MVP form. I would assume he will fetch a nice return at the trade deadline if the Cubs opt to move him. But what if the Cubs kept him? It's not often you can add an MVP-level player to your team. Most of us know him as a center fielder, but he's doing well at first base, which is where he played yesterday, many times recently. When the team has no other viable options at first, why not lock him in as your first baseman? When you have a core of Swanson, Horner, and Bellinger in the infield, that looks pretty good for the next few seasons to come. Happ and Suzuki are signed for a few more years in the outfield. Miguel Amaya is probably the catcher of the future, so it leaves center and third base as the obvious holes to fill offensively. Cubs desperately need power. Bellinger is proving he can step up in that area. While I agree that Bellinger will bring a haul of prospects if they choose to move him, at some point you need to focus on major league level talent, major league ready talent. Bellinger is obviously a keeper. The trade deadline just 1 week away. I know there's been a lot of critiquing of daily lineups. Cubs Twitter lights up every day, essentially. But what we saw yesterday was a pretty solid lineup, at least spots 1 through 7, maybe even 1 through 8. Look, I'm not concerned about position in the lineup, but who is in what defensive position? That is what stands out to me, and I think Mike Tauchman has done a nice job in center field and in the leadoff spot. Why he's not leading off every day is quite puzzling. Nico Horner at second base, Ian Happ in left, Bellinger at first, batting cleanup. Seiya Suzuki in right field, Dansby Swanson at short, and Christopher Morel, the DH, batting 7th yesterday. Right there, 1 through 7, pretty impressive. Yan Gomes catching yesterday in the 8th position in the lineup. I think he and Miguel Amaya have both looked good this year catching. I'd expect Amaya to get more playing time behind the plate as he continues to mature. Yesterday's lineup, Also included Miles Mastrobuoni playing third and batting ninth. Look, I don't even know why he's on this team. Statistically speaking, he's one of the worst batters in all of Major League Baseball. Cubs claim they have a bunch of talent in the minors. So why is Mastrobuoni taking up a roster spot? It does not make sense. Our This and That segment, news and notes from around Major League Baseball. Wild game yesterday in Seattle. The Mariners over the Blue Jays 9-8. Seattle with 3 home runs in the third. Blue Jays matched that with 3 home runs of their own in the fifth. According to ESPN, that's the 6th time since 1961 where both teams had 3 home runs in 1 inning. Sal Frelick made his Major League debut yesterday with Milwaukee. 3 for 3, driving home the game-winning run. Looked pretty good defensively, too. Milwaukee 4-3 winners over Atlanta. Brewers have struggled for production in right field all year, so perhaps they have found their answer. It is Hall of Fame weekend in Cooperstown. Ceremony this afternoon to honor the class of 2023 inductees. Pat Hughes, the longtime Cubs radio play-by-play announcer, is one of the inductees. Sports writer John Lowe and longtimer Dodger Carl Erskine also being recognized. Player inductees include Fred McGriff and Scott Rowland. If you watch baseball in the 90s, you definitely remember those guys. Major League Baseball was wanting to make the game more fun this year. Tuesday may confirm that is the case. 10 teams on Tuesday scored 10 or more runs. First time that has happened since the 1800s. Cubs, by the way, one of those teams. They put up 17 against the Nationals on Tuesday. This afternoon, it's the Cubs and Cardinals wrapping up a 4-game set at Wrigley Field, 2:20 Eastern. Jamison Tyone for the Cubs, Jordan Montgomery starting for the Cardinals. Cubs already have beaten Montgomery once this season, back in May. Cubs have won 4 of 5. They are 5-4 since the All-Star break. They're now 4 games below 500, 7.5 games back in the National League Central. Milwaukee now leading the division, and the Cubs are 6 games back in the wild card race. Off tomorrow, then 2 games on the south side with the White Sox, and another 4-game series with the Cardinals next weekend in St. Louis. Look, if the Cubs win 5 of their next 6, they will be at 500 with a couple days remaining until the trade deadline. May seem optimistic, but the Cubs have a better record than both the Cards and Sox. Winning 5 of the next 6 is certainly not impossible. Swanson returned to the Cubs lineup yesterday, returning from injury after being out for a couple of weeks. And Nick Madrigal, who I think is the Cubs' best option at third, is expected back soon. He started a rehab stint with Iowa Friday night versus Indianapolis. Hitless Friday night, 2 for 3 yesterday. Another interesting note, barring any changes to the Cubs rotation, Kyle Hendricks is not scheduled to pitch at Wrigley Field again until after the trade deadline. There is a chance he may have pitched his final game as a Chicago Cub. Interesting storyline, perhaps. One of many that will play out in the coming days. Rick's Bleachers on Twitter. Share your thoughts anytime and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and more. All things Chicago Cubs in under 10 minutes. This is the Bricks and Bleachers Podcast.